What did he mean
Right.
to you and to the game of basketball?
Yeah. Well, obviously, it's a sad day, with his passing. I think everybody, especially in the Midwest, that wanted to get into coaching, that wanted to, just learn the game. Like there isn't a book out there or a video out there that I haven't seen, that he published, that he put out. And so no different than, you know, those great clinicians like Hubie Brown and Larry Brown and those guys. They were obviously great coaches, but they also, you kind of see that with the world now, like they taught the world. The other thing that I think he did from a basketball standpoint at Purdue is, he made us better. In competition, and especially with rivalries, you get everybody's best. And, he always got Purdue's best. We knew, like when we played Indiana, like, you had to have your ducks in a row. Like, it was going to be a great battle, but you also knew that they were always going to have a great game plan. They're always going to be prepared. But that's what great coaches and great competition does. It makes other programs better. And I think he brought the best out of everybody in this league nationally. And, that was the standard. They were the standard. And, I think Coach Katie would totally agree with that in terms of having somebody that you have to constantly beat, whether it's in recruiting, whether they're in games, whether it's trying to win the Big Ten championship, whatever it might be, because they had so much success. But, his knowledge of the game and his understanding of the game and what he passed on to a lot of people, made the game, pretty enjoyable to watch. And obviously being in this state and having players and having access to players, and then, really, building that and having such a dominating program. I think Michigan States of the world and Ohio States and everybody would really say the same things. But, he really affected the game, and he affected a lot of people, with his knowledge.
Matt, you said you were hoping that the wing position would kind of figure itself out. Is there anything you saw today that separated anyone on the court?
Well, just those guys, being able to get in the game and play. You can see the physical gifts, from Cam Heide and Miles Colvin. Like, you can see that. And so, but you can also see what Lance Jones gives us. His ability to shoot the basketball. He gives us some quickness. He can defend. Fletcher and Braden, have made strides since last year. So, like, you don't, trying to piece all that together is difficult when you have guys that are going to play 25 to 30 minutes. And against certain teams, when people, like, have more athleticism, have more quickness, like having two guards in there really helps you, handle the basketball, make decisions, break presses, whatever it might be, right? And so you just have those 200 minutes. That's what's difficult. And, like, once again, like, there's no way around it with Zach. One of those other big guys is going to have a low-minute game, no matter who out of the three, right? And that's what, you have to have. If you have a great program or you have a great team, you have to have guys willing to sacrifice and understand that there's only so many minutes right there. But it's a good problem to have. There's no question about it. And so I'm excited for it.
You touched on Lance, right here. You touched on Lance, and obviously started the game. Was knocked down a lot of threes, looked really confident out there. Is that something that where he's a guy where you'll run sets for him to get him shots in games? I mean, obviously he's not going to be this open always.
Yeah, well, it's, when you play through a lot of ball screens with Braden's such a good passer, and then when you play through Zach in the low post, and then you get offensive rebound kickouts, or you get transition looks, like now you can run a few things for him, but more than anything, he's just gonna, get those shots organically because they double Zach, or they give attention to Braden in ball screens, or whatever we're running. So, like tonight, like we didn't run a whole lot. We might have ran one thing for him, and he got some pretty good looks out there. So, it's hard because, and we talk about this a lot, because you'll have guys, you have players, and you'll be like, they can do this, that, and the other, but what's their pecking order in terms of who can score the ball well, right? So if you have Zach Edey, obviously he's one. then Braden Smith's ability to pass the basketball and play through ball screens is probably 2 for us. Then you have someone like Fletcher that can come off of pin downs, that can come off a dribble handoff action and attack. Then you got a post-up guy like Trey Kaufman. You got a guy that's pretty prolific as a shooter in Mason Gillis. So I could go on and on, right? So, like, where do you wedge in there? If somebody's like 4 or 5, 6, they don't end up getting things ran for them. So you got to be able to kind of fit into that role and organically make shots and make plays. And obviously tonight he did that.
Matt, I have a two-parter. I think I know the answer to the first question, but I got to ask anyway. It's safe to say you're probably not going to redshirt anyone this year.
I don't think so. It would have to be from them. So I don't get to that conversation until after this game, after the second exhibition game. So
Secondly, how much value is there in having Ethan Morton, Caleb First, Mason Gillis, guys, if this is your starting lineup, guys who have started in the past,
Right.
coming off the bench and playing roles, but having been in big moments in games?
yeah, it's huge. The thing that's different is just coming off the bench, right? So like now your mindset of getting loose and then getting cold and then having to play. And it's like people have no idea that it's an art, physically and mentally, to get yourself in there and be productive right away. Now, some guys will just come out firing, right? They'll just come off the bench and they'll just let it rip. And the other guys, like, will want to, just, kind of find their way in there. Coach Katie used to always tell me to get a lather before I took a shot. And I'd say by the time I got a lather, you take me out. And which he probably never should have put me in the first place, but that's, that's here nor there. So I'd always joke, and I understand what he's saying, but like, when you're that guy and you come off the bench and you're the 8th man, like sometimes the ball doesn't come around a whole lot. So like, you get a chance to cork one, you do. But no, it's, when you have a deep team like we have, like now you have some experience and now you have some other guys, and then you're trying to get the best group together, kind of starting. I'm not saying that we stay with like who we're starting, but the other thing that pops up is sometimes like who is great in your practices together. Like we don't play ourselves, right? But that's all we play against forever. So like that's, as a coach, that's all you have to gauge the past seasons in your practice. And now when you get to games, like sometimes the games, like their quickness gave us issues, as you saw, like the backdoor cuts and, and obviously they haven't played a lot of games. They've only played a couple games so far, but it still was something where our guys were like, hey man, like they're going to dribble at you in backdoor. They're going to jump stop, pivot, reverse pivot, lose vision, gain vision, backdoor you again. Like, let's don't do this. And they still kept doing it. So like that's something like with guys from a defensive standpoint. So you're trying to get that blend of production on both offense and defense.
Can you kind of cultivate a little bit of versatility in games like this in terms of having Ethan at the 1, having Miles see extended run at the 2, having Camden play a little bit of 4, things like that?
Right.
If you can establish some versatility, that means depth too, doesn't it?
No question. But like when I get into that, I'm just trying to get him minutes, and so I get stuck a little bit when I'm heavy at certain positions. But yeah, like Ethan's a guy that can play a lot of different positions. He asked me when we subbed, well, who's the 4? I said, well, you are. He says, no, I'm the point. I said, well, shit. Can't do that one then, can we? Excuse my French. So, yeah, you got guys like him that can play multiple positions. One of the hard things to do for young guys, especially when you run a lot of stuff, is to be able to learn multiple spots. And, now like, well, I just know it at the 3. Well, you box yourself in a little bit, right? So now you got someone who only knows stuff at the 3, and now there's some openings that maybe at other slots, and now you don't know it. So we really try to push on them to learn, like, if you're someone like Brian, learn the 2 and the 3. Your Miles, learn the 2 and the 3. All those guys trying to learn that second position. But that's hard. That doesn't come easy.
Hey, Matt, talk about the importance. You play a lot of teams like Grace College, IU plays teams, the big teams play these
Right.
smaller schools. Talk about the importance of that for you and what you guys do for the whole state of Indiana for
Right.
basketball to kind of showcase basketball in Indiana.
Well, sure. Like they're obviously a very good team. Their big kid's a good player. You could see as the game kind of progressed that he was getting some guys some minutes, but they have a good group. Like they're gonna have a chance to get to a Final Four, hopefully win a national championship. They went to Elite Eight last year. So they have a great program. They've been very, very successful. So anytime we can play games, sometimes when I venture out of state, it's normally a friend of mine. But like, no, anytime we can play, teams from our state, especially that, have had the success that they've had, it's pretty cool.
Did you do like a full scouting report for this one? We talked a lot about the Arkansas game, about how much you actually prepared for Arkansas and
Yeah.
how much you focused on Purdue. Was this more of a traditional prep work?
No,
sort of
not
situation?
really.
No.
No. We did a little bit. We did personnel, and we talked about personnel, and we talked about some of a little bit of their actions and stuff like that. But no, we didn't do as much. Obviously, we will in the first game, and you get to that point. It's difficult because like the stuff you see early in the season, like they smoked a couple teams, and you watch and you see what they're doing and stuff. But you really try to get guys to play on their defensive principles more than anything, than just execute on the offensive end. But it'll get ramped up. Like the more you play, the more games you have to watch. But the most important team is still your team.
So how does that kind of shape your how you view your attention to detail from a defensive perspective, things like that?
Just sticking to our rules. So if you have ball screen defensive rules and you have post defensive rules, you have trapping rules, and like who sticks with their rules, who sees things, who's quick to things, who's talking, who's in a stance. If you make a mistake, do you keep making the same mistake? Things of that nature. Just some habitual type things, like whether that's good or bad. Like when you see guys that are they constantly stick on those rules or whatever. One of the things that pops up with players that doesn't get said much in recruiting because they're not there yet is trust. Like, do you trust them? Like, you have physical ability, you have great talent, but do I trust you? Do you do what I say? Do you stick to our rules? Are you detail-oriented? And that's tough for, like, really talented people because most talented guys aren't that detail-oriented, and the ones that are in the Hall of Fame. Because you take elite talent along with details and understanding and knowledge, and then especially if you throw in competitive spirit, that's a recipe for an elite basketball player. And I think that's a real important thing for young people to understand. Like, you can be the best player in the world, but if your teammates don't trust you and your coach doesn't trust you, it's going to be hard to win with you. But now if you can get to where you follow the defensive rules, you understand ball screen packages, you understand how we're handling the post, you understand when they run certain things, what we're going to do. Now we can trust you. We know that, you're going to do what we ask you to do, and then you stay connected. That's that connectivity that you got to have. When you branch off and do something that's not a read, like now no one knows what the hell is going on at all. And like now you disconnect us. But if you do what we ask you to do and it's like you're a little bit short and then there's a little bit of failure there, it's all right. You can build off of that and get better and keep improving because that's, you can't surprise your teammates. When you just kind of do whatever you want on defense and like now you don't know what's going on. Like now that trust isn't there, and when you get into tough games or tough situations, that's why you see more experienced players. That's why you see them play at times.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.